On this episode of the Oklahoma Breakdown with Ikard and Lehman, presented by Riverwind Casino, Shehan Jeyarajah joins us to talk about his Big 12 predictions, and we give you our winners and losers of the weekend. Please download and subscribe to the podcast, rate it 5 stars, and write us a good review. Follow the show on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Just search Oklahoma Breakdown on any of those, and you'll find us. All right. Our man Michael Hosty will kick this thing off. It's time for the Oklahoma Breakdown. It's a beautiful Sunday, June 25th, and you're listening to the Oklahoma Breakdown with Ikard and Lehman, presented by Riverwind Casino. Riverwind is Oklahoma City's premier casino experience, and there are so many reasons why Riverwind is consistently voted OKC's #1 casino, but it all starts with their amazing variety of gaming thrills and excitement. Riverwind's beautiful award-winning environment plays host to more than 2,800 of the latest electronic games with a huge selection of table games, including blackjack, blackjack match, roulette, and Teddy's favorite, craps. No matter what your game, Riverwind has it in spades and hearts. And to learn more about their gaming promotions and entertainment options in the month of June, all you got to do is visit riverwind.com. Riverwind Casino, simply the best. Now recording this on Sunday afternoon. Please leave us a 5-star review and a nice comment. Ted Lehman, how we doing, sir?
Doing fantastic. Cannot complain.
I don't quite feel like I just played a football game, but from a mental strain, like physically, I feel fine. Okay. Now, other than I'm just getting old type of constant soreness. You know the struggle, but hosting a 2-year-old birthday party.
Yeah.
It's exhausting, man. It'll take it out of you. It'll take it out of you, especially swimming involved. So you're high alert, kids in the pool, now parents in the pool as well. But you're just everything high alert the whole time, like trying to host, trying to get people drinks, everything, make sure everyone's happy, caring about other people, which my wife has gotten me to do somehow. It's exhausting. It is exhausting, but fun time.
You know, it really makes you kind of appreciate the usefulness of like a Chuck E. Cheese.
Yes.
Where you just go host a party somewhere else. You're there, make sure they've got the cake, make sure the right amount of pizza's out, don't get the cups messed up. And that's really it. You know, it makes you have a new appreciation for just taking the party somewhere else.
I'm going to try to talk my wife into doing some of that moving forward. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. I know it's not, and that's fine. But yeah, awesome party. Fantastic. Great, but exhausting. Absolutely exhausting.
Yeah.
But hey, feel good.
You made it through. You made it through.
Powered through. Now, like always, we start with the OU football stuff. There's really nothing to talk about, right? Now, we've got Shehan Jeyarajah, who wrote an awesome article predicting every game in the Big 12. And we get into a lot of OU football with him. But, Ted, this point in the calendar, other than the defense going to the lake at Broken Bow, and there appears to be no one that suffered any lake injuries, which is, that's always good, right? No injuries at the lake can be a dangerous place at times. But other than that, man, there's some recruiting news that the staff's hoping to get very soon that will be exciting if they get the news they think they're going to get. But other than that, there's really nothing to talk about, which it hasn't felt that way in a very long time when it comes to OU football.
Oh, no. We had someone on Call Your Shot a handful of shows ago who said, no news. No news is good news at this point of the season, at this point of the year. And I totally agree with that. We're cruising along. Summer workouts seem to be going well. The offense and defense are getting some personal time, hanging out with one another. So, yeah, I think everything is looking pretty good right now.
Which is good. So it's really all we got when it comes to OU football. So now we'll yell at Shehan for not picking OU to play in the Big 12 championship game, which will be fun. But first, we've got birthday shout-outs, of course. Happy 6th birthday to Chloe Palmer.
And happy 56th birthday to Tracy Kleinert.
All right, let's talk some Big 12 predictions with our man Shehan Jeyarajah. But first, Love's Travel Stops is now offering a nationwide 10-cent per gallon discount on gas and auto diesel. Just download the Love's Connect app and scan your barcode at the prompt on screen and watch that price drop 10 cents per gallon. Across the country, the Love's Connect app unlocks exclusive deals and can help any traveler plan their route or meal on the highway. So before you hit the road, be sure to download the Love's Connect app to save 10 cents per gallon and experience the country's best highway hospitality at Love's Travel Stops. Love's also has you covered if you forget your phone charger or headphones with their expanded mobile to-go zone. And of course, don't forget to grab yourself some of that delicious Java Amore.
Opolis Clothing is the exclusive home for all of our Oklahoma Breakdown merchandise and is the best place to get your OU and OKC Thunder gear as well. If you want to live your life in buttery soft comfort, go to opolisclothing.com. That's OPOLIS clothing.com. Use promo code TED, TED, for 10% off your entire order. That's opolisclothing.com. Use promo code TED for 10% off. Buttery soft and 10% off.
And hey, you hungry out there? Well, then head to the garage for hand smashed patties, butter toasted buns, and ice cold beer. The food is fantastic, and it is the perfect spot to watch any big game. Visit eatatthegarage.com to find a location near you and order online from the garage in your neighborhood. All right, here's our man, Shehan Jeyarajah. It is our pleasure to be joined by a man that does a tremendous job covering college football for CBS Sports. Shehan Jeyarajah is in the house. How we doing, man? How we feeling?
I'm doing great. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So you wrote an article, and I highly recommend anyone that loves Big 12 football, loves OU football, to go check it out. Basically, you looked at the over-under win totals for each Big 12 team, and then you picked every single Big 12 game that every single Big 12 team is going to play. Do you just like punishing yourself, or like what I assume the boss says, hey, you got to do this. And you're like, okay, fine. But that had to be quite the process.
Well, I'll tell you what. So we schedule them out for every conference, right, in college football. And obviously I have a Big 12 background. I'm from the state of Texas. I've covered the Big 12 for a while. So they get me to do the Big 12 ones. And yes, obviously I am a glutton for punishment, but also I got so much more punishment than everybody else got, which I think is actually a pretty good indication that nobody knows what to think about this upcoming Big 12 season. Obviously, so many teams that are just up in the air. And you know what? If I have to be the one to withstand that, I can live with that.
Now, before we dive into any of the individual teams, I just wanted to get your opinion, because the Big 12 it's already difficult to predict. It seems like every year a somewhat random team will make a run out, like TCU last year. I don't know that anyone predicted that. It's hard to see, and feels like every year someone does that. But now we add 4 teams to the mix. How difficult is it to gauge where those teams are going to sit within the Big 12? I mean, they've got their own issues. Everyone does, replacing players and the, the things that go into that. But like just transitioning to the league, how difficult did that make it to try and preview the whole conference?
Well, I'll tell you what. So I've done some version of this for about 5 years. I did it before at Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. Now I'm doing it for CBS Sports. And you kind of find a rhythm with these things, right? Especially when we have this round robin schedule, especially when we know who's going to play who and where it's going to be. Adding 4 new teams mixed with how that changes the schedule made this complete chaos, having to take it this time around. This was by far the hardest one that I've ever had to do. And you mentioned the 4 new teams coming in: BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, UCF. I mean, we've seen these teams win at a high level very recently. I mean, in the last 5 years or so, every one of them has won 10 games. Every one of them has competed for the conference. They are really good teams. But doing it in a conference where you can lose any single week is a different sort of variable. And actually, even to throw into that, you don't even have a Kansas this year, right? You don't even have a game really across the board that you can just guarantee that's going to be a win for 8 or 9 teams. And so it made it very, very difficult. I think that if you are a fan of one of the four new teams, other than maybe UCF, you probably think I underrated your team or undervalued your team. And I think that's totally fair. But for me, I look at the teams that have come into the Big 12, obviously during that 2012 year where we saw West Virginia and TCU come in. And both those teams, I think, were in better situations than almost every team that's entering the Big 12 this year. Not that they're in bad situations, but they had their coaches, they were coming off success. And both those teams struggled, especially in their first 2 years. It takes a second to get up to speed. And so it made things very difficult. And if you were to tell me Cincinnati goes 11-1 and I picked them to go 4-8, I don't think I could argue with you.
Now, since we're talking about the four new members, right? You've got UCF in your predictions. You've got UCF going 8-4, which is the best of any of the four new members. What makes you like UCF more than the other three? Like, what sets them apart in your mind?
No, it's a great question. So there's a couple parts of this. One, they are the only team in the out of the four coming in who return a quarterback. All three others are going to be making quarterback changes this upcoming season. The other part of it too, when you look across four teams, is that when you look at play caller, when you look at head coach, when you look at quarterback, they have more alignment, I think, in those factors than everybody else coming into the league. The other part that I really like about UCF, and I think that whether it was fully purposeful or not, hiring Gus Malzahn, I think, has been a good decision from transitioning into the Big 12, because when you look at UCF, their roster looks more like a Big 12 roster from a depth perspective than the other three teams in the conference. You look at metrics like the 247 talent composite, they're actually right up there in the top 40. The other teams are more in the 60s and 70s. And you look at the transfers they brought in, certainly Gus Malzahn's connection to the SEC, I think is a big part of that. Obviously, from a recruiting perspective, they've done a well above average job for multiple years. I don't think that they're just a development program, like maybe you're looking at some of the other schools and seeing that they get the most out of guys. And that's an important piece, but it's only one piece. So I think that when you just look at the state of their roster, when you look at what they have coming back, and when you look at the coaching staff that's obviously been there and done that to some extent, I think that they have the best chance of withstanding the grind of the schedule. Now, other teams might have higher ceilings at times. I just don't know if they're going to have that week-to-week consistency.
Talk to us about Houston. Because it's a lot of people picking them to do very poorly in the upcoming season, which it's going to be a tough transition for them. You got to beat them Texas though, which is an interesting pick. So what do you think about the way the Houston season lays out?
Well, so again, I've covered state of Texas football for since 2018, and when I tell you that Houston fans are excited for this Texas game, that is like the understatement of the entire century. This is a program-defining game in a lot of ways. So, I don't know what they're going to do the rest of the games. I have them going 6-6. If it's 5, if it's 4, it wouldn't shock me. But I think that, one, you look at Dana Holgorsen, he's somebody who does, to some extent, know how to navigate the Big 12. 2, there's like that chaos factor with them. I don't think that Texas is going to face an atmosphere quite like this. They're going to play a lot of tough games. They're playing a lot of their tough Texas teams on the road. But Houston's going to be, I think, a unique experience when it comes for Texas. And I think that this is a game that Texas very much might not understand the motivation that Houston's going to have for this, because this is their only matchup that they're going to play as members of the Big 12. So that was kind of my logic on Texas. I think that Texas is, to me, the favorite in the conference by a good margin. I don't think that they're good enough to just erase every other game and say that they don't matter. I think that it's going to be a lot of competitive games that they win. When I look at the rest of Houston's games, I only have them winning 3 Big 12 games, all of them at home. And they play West Virginia, who I have finishing last place in the conference. I'm really worried about them. I have them beating Oklahoma State. I think Oklahoma State's just going to be an inconsistent team this year. So again, we're talking like the 5-6 range. So there's going to be moments where it looks great. There's going to be moments where their skill position players pop off, and there's going to be moments where they look like a miserable football team. But I think that Dana Holgorsen knows how to. If you give him one game, I think that he's going to have a really good chance of causing some chaos.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if Donovan Smith ends up being the guy for them at quarterback, and if they can get him to play up to his full potential. Who knows with the Cougars, but. You mentioned Texas going to be the favorite, and you've been covering the league for a long time. and this is the first time you have taken the leap. You've done it. You have picked the Longhorns to win the Big 12 for the first time since you've been covering the conference. What all led to that decision?
So a couple things. One, when I looked at the All Big 12 team, when I looked at the people who I picked for awards, I mean, just a lot of Texas guys popped up there, right? I mean, you're talking about potentially the best receiver in the conference in Xavier Worthy. You're talking about an offensive lineman in Kelvin Banks, who's going to be a first-round pick whenever he's draft eligible. You're talking about a defender at linebacker in Jalen Ford, who I think might be the best defender in the whole conference. I think they've added some really key transfers. A.D. Mitchell from Georgia at receiver. Isaiah Neer is going to be back for them as well, somebody who was going to contribute last season before he got hurt. I just think that they have the combination of experience with a second-year quarterback coming back, consistency on the coaching staff, high-end talent, guys who I think are legit NFL players like Kelvin Banks, Jatavian Sanders at tight end, Jalen Ford at linebacker, like I mentioned. And I think enough of their questions are answerable with guys that I see on the roster who I have high hopes for than I do any other team. Now, look, the thing is, I have them going 7-2 in conference. I have 3 or 4 teams going 6-3. This is going to be a fight to the very end. This is not Texas gliding above the rest of the conference necessarily. But when I look at the other teams that I considered to be that top spot in the Big 12, Kansas State, of course, was one I had to consider. Texas Tech, I think, has a lot of upside, certainly Oklahoma. These are all teams that I see much more devastating flaws that I think could derail their seasons. So part of this is what I think Texas can do. And part of it also is that I don't see obvious competition that on paper, and that's all we have right now, should be able to compete with what they have. And this is a leap. Like you mentioned, I've covered the Big 12 since 2013, and I've never picked them to win the league. And so I understand the magnitude of what I'm picking here. They haven't done it since 2009. And you look at all the teams that have done it since 2009. But I think that they just have the least questions. And a big part of this, too, is frankly, if they don't make it to the Big 12 title game, if they don't win the league this year, I mean, I can't say it's anything except a failure for what they have and what they bring back and what they've been able to build over the past couple of years.
Now, one of the interesting picks in there is I've started to see this gain some steam across the country, that Texas is going to go into Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama, something that is very, very rare. And, I agree, Texas is going to have a nice roster coming back, but their roster isn't close to what Alabama's is. How did you come to the conclusion that Texas is going to go down there and beat Nick Saban's team?
So when you look at Texas, right, you look at a team that gets up for big games and does not get up for medium games. And even last year, I think Alabama was a better team last year and Texas was a worse team last year. And Texas should have won that game. Now, it was in Austin. Going to Tuscaloosa is another story. But that happened, right? They were able to compete from a roster perspective enough. The other part of this is, to an extent, fading Alabama from my perspective. They lose Bryce Young at quarterback, who was, if he wasn't the best player in college football over the last 2 years, he was top 3. And they're replacing him with, I don't know what at this point. Jalen Milroe started games for them, but the fact they had to bring in a transfer at quarterback and Ty Buckner is just very concerning to me. It tells me that they're not happy with what they've got on the roster. I don't see sort of dynamic guys at the skill positions who are going to be Alabama level game changers like we've seen in the past. And defensively, obviously, they're working through the loss of Will Anderson, and Dallas Turner is going to be a really good player for them. But I don't know that I see a surefire Alabama team. And I see a Texas team that should be not just better, but it should be pretty significantly better than they were last season. They've got a second-year quarterback coming in. I think that's a huge part of it. And again, this team gets up for big games. That's been in Texas DNA for several years. I'm worried about, again, people were asking me, how do you pick Texas to beat Alabama and then lose to Houston? And I'm like, have you watched Texas over the last 10 years? That's what they do, right? I mean, they win the Notre Dame game and then go 5-7. That's what happens. And so I think that they're going to be really up for that game. And I do think that they have the roster to compete. And we can, again, Steve Sarkisian's been a part of putting it together. I think NIL's been a part of putting it together. But they've built the roster, I think, that can compete with Alabama. And I just think that Alabama's got a lot of question marks for me, and I'm a little concerned about what they have going in.
When you look at Texas's team, for me, the big question mark going into 2023 is the defense. I thought they made some really nice gains on that side of the ball in 2022, but a lot of those key pieces are gone, right? You think Coburn and Ajomo up there on the defensive line, Overshown at linebacker, like they lost some veteran guys that were really important to them a season ago. Any concern with Texas's defense when you look at that football team? Is that the biggest question mark you have for them?
So it's a very big question for sure. I think that sort of down-to-down offensive consistency is also a big question for me. That's been something that they've struggled with, and they don't have Bijan Robinson to bail them out anymore. When you look at their finish to last
God. I was so good.
No, and so when you look at their finish to last season, and they finished the Big 12 season pretty strong, it was basically Bijan bail us out because we can't do very many things consistently offensively despite all the talent. And, I think Quinn was kind of still dealing with his shoulder injury, but he was not very good to close the year. So that has to get better as well. I think that I like the step that they took from year 1 to year 2 under Pete Kwiatkowski. Obviously, Gary Patterson seemed to get a lot of credit for it. I think that it's a combined effort. I think that Coach K is very good as well on the defensive side of the ball, even with Gary Patterson gone. But I like also the depth that they bring back. I think that they're just going to it's going to be a moderate step, but it's enough of a step, I think, defensively. And you mentioned some of the guys they lost. Well, they bring in the guy in Jalen Catalon at safety, who I'm really excited about. He was a freshman All-American at Arkansas before he dealt with some injuries. If he's able to play, I think he has a chance to be special. Jalen Ford, who I mentioned, might be the best defensive player in the Big 12 at middle linebacker. And on the defensive line, they've built up a lot of depth there. Barron Terrell is somebody who led the team in sacks last year, but I don't think that the defensive line was all that good last year. I think that, they had their moments. They were okay as run stoppers. But, you look at the sack numbers, you look at the pressures, it wasn't an elite unit by any means. I think that they have a chance to be at least a little better than they were last season, even though they might be a little younger. So I have enough faith in the depth that they bring back that it'll give them a baseline. And certainly there's upside there, but I don't think they need to hit it to still be the best team in the Big 12.
All right, Oklahoma. You've got Oklahoma going 9-3.
How dare you?
Well, it's got to be one of the more difficult. You've got a team that's been over the last 20 years more consistent pretty much than anyone else in college football. And then you go 6-7 with the new coach. It's really hard to predict what to expect in that coming year. So what were some of the things that led you to that 9-3?
Yeah. So, when I look at Oklahoma and when I look at this first year for Brent Venables, right, I see a program, like Oklahoma fans have said, that had some issues, right? That whenever the former coaching staff left, I think had some major holes in roster and developments. And they were able to fill some of those last season with transfers and some good young players coming in as well. But I think that it's more than a one-year flip, right? I don't think that this is just a blip. I think it's a build. And so when I looked at Oklahoma, certainly, you have to say they're capable of winning all 12 of their games. Like, I don't think that they're going to be out of any of their 12 games next season. And really that was consistent with last season as well. They lost a lot of close games, but they were competitive in all but one or two of them. And so I think it's going to be like that a lot this year for Oklahoma. But the difference versus say 2021, 2020, even 2019 is I think that they are capable again of beating everybody, but they are also capable of losing to a lot of their teams that they're going to play as well. It's going to be a lot of 50-50 games. I think that there are some limitations at quarterback. I wouldn't be shocked if Jackson Arnold plays them to end the year for them. I think that defensively, again, I expect growth, but this was a bottom 10 defense in the nation last year. And I don't think that it's plugging holes in a little bit of experience away from being good, for example. And so the games that I picked, right, I have them losing against Texas and TCU. I also have them losing at Oklahoma State in the final bedlam. I'm sure some people will have some issue with that. But, I think that when you look at the rest of their schedule, that game at Cincinnati, the Big 12 opener for Cincinnati, that's a dangerous game. Iowa State, I think, could have a chance to be better than people think. At BYU is a tough place to play. UCF coming at home. Like, if you told me that they went 9-3 and I picked all 3 of their losses wrong, I wouldn't be that surprised. So I think that it's going to be a team with a lot of upside that by the end of the year is playing at a high level. But I get, again, just question the consistency that they're going to have this upcoming season, replacing a lot, trying to fill a lot of holes. For me, it's a huge red flag to me that Jeff Levy's system only has really one proven wide receiver who's able to make plays in space. Some more guys can step up, but I'm worried about that. So a lot of good is going to come this season, but I've got a lot of question marks as well.
And I think that's fair. I do. Now, you mentioned it does not sound like you're very high on Dillon Gabriel. And I saw that you put your Big 12 quarterback rankings, tiers, however you wanted to describe it. But in the top tier, you had Will Howard, Quinn Ewers, and Jalen Daniels. And then in the next tier, you had Tyler Shuck, Hunter Deckers, Chandler Morris, and then Dillon Gabriel. What has you doubting Dillon Gabriel's ability? Like, what are the main reasons behind that?
Sure. So I think that when I look at Dillon Gabriel, obviously a quarterback who does so many things well, I think that his limitations are very well known by Big 12 teams at this point. And the thing that I question most about him is sort of that intermediate game, because I think in this Big 12, with the way that teams play this 3-3-5, you have to be able to win in the intermediate range. And Dillon Gabriel is very much a boomer bust type quarterback. He hits the big shots, and obviously a lot of other stuff is built through the screen game. And I was at Baylor in 2013-14, right? Like I know sort of the intimate ways of how Jeff Levy's offense works, and I think that with Dillon Gabriel, you're talking about somebody who I think can do the big stuff, and the little stuff is what I'm a little more worried about. Can he hit the intermediate stuff? Can he go to the middle of the field? Can he stand in the pocket, right? These are questions that I have about him. And he's entering year 5, I think, as a college football quarterback at this point. I don't think that stuff is likely to get better. So when I look at him, the biggest thing that I have about him is upside. And I think that when I list out the guys ahead of him, they've, I think, been comparably good, but I think have more upside than what Dillon Gabriel might possess at this point.
Now, do you factor in like the skill position guys for that? For example, like Quinn Ewers, he's going to have great skill position guys coming back. He had the same guys a year ago. He doesn't have Bijan Robinson. Like you could realistically make the argument that maybe they're not as good at skill position as they were a year ago. But like Dillon Gabriel, who statistically was far better than Quinn Ewers last year, they went 6-7, but he's like, how do you think his skill position guys factor into that equation?
Yeah. So the way that I'd frame it is, how able are these quarterbacks able to do what their team needs them to do within their system, right? And so I think that when you look at Oklahoma's system, it puts a lot on the quarterback. It makes them make difficult throws and makes them make throws down the sideline. And yes, certainly when you look at Oklahoma's receiver, the situation this upcoming year, that is a red flag for me. And I think that, look, if you're asking me who had a better 2022, like Dillon Gabriel had a better 2022 than Quinn Ewers, but I think that Quinn Ewers is more prepared to do the things that Texas needs to do to have a high level offense, because of, one, what they ask him to do, two, certainly what they have in their system. I mean, again, if you're asking like, who would you take to start your team? I don't know that Will Howard is my number one, but what he's going to be asked to do in that Kansas State system and the effectiveness that he's played with in the Big 12 is why I have him number one, for example.
Well, Will Howard made Teddy and I look like idiots last season. I told the guy to his face that he should move to tight end. Swear.
In our defense, his backup quarterback, like, now you can argue they put him in bad spots, but it was not good.
I'll tell you what, I remember watching him again, like you said, when he was a backup, and he was, at that time, I felt like one of the worst players I'd ever seen play quarterback.
He sucked.
he was so bad, and he just didn't know where he was going with it. He didn't know what he wanted to do with the ball. And even when he just, I mean, again, a lot of this is confidence, I think, but he couldn't plant and throw. Like, he just didn't do it. And, so I remember when Adrian Martinez started dealing with his injuries last year, and I'm like, oh dear, that's what they have backing him up. And I just saw him come out and dice teams up, and I'm like, who is this guy? Well, is there another Will Howard on the roster? But I mean, again, I think that, and I kind of went on a little bit of a rant on this earlier this offseason on social media. Like, people want to be done with a guy so quickly sometimes. Yeah. And, we're spoiled in the era of Trevor Lawrence's and Bryce Young to believe that somebody's going to be good day one. It's just not realistic for every player. And I think that, look, is Will Howard going to be the number one pick in the NFL draft? No. But I think that when you look at him staying with a staff that understands why they recruited him, understands what he can do, and knows how to cater a game to his skill set and also develop the skills that he needs to have in order to succeed in an offense. I mean, Kansas State obviously does such a great job with it, and I think you can even look at Skylar Thompson. I always mix up Skylar Thompson, Skylar Howard, because we had him a couple of years across in the Big 12. But I think that staff has just done such a tremendous job of making guys better and making guys understand what they need to do.
Yeah. So with that in mind, Kansas State defending champs, right? You've got them going 10-2 and playing for a Big 12 title. Does that have everything to do with just how good it seems Chris Kleiman is?
Yeah, I think that when you look at that team, my big red flag about them is certainly that they lost the dynamic guys. They lost the Deuce Vaughn. They lost the Felix Anudike-Uzomah. But I think that their baseline is so high that it just is an advantage when you're playing almost anybody else in the conference. I mean, you're talking about a team that defensively is physical and knows where they need to be. And they were 15 deep last year on the defensive side of the ball. And offensively, again, Will Howard executes that system at a high level. I think that one of the I remember looking at their tight end fullback Ben Sinnott's numbers at the end of the year, and I'm like, I thought that he had 2,000 yards, man. Like, he was just always in the spot that he was supposed to be.
He killed OU, I can tell you that, man.
Yeah,
just diced them up in the middle of the field.
It felt like that was every game, and then it's like, oh, he had 300 yards. Did I watch every one of them? I guess, but no, he's a good player. I think he's going to be a big part of that offense. And I trust Kansas State to develop and put guys in good positions and develop tight ends and develop receivers. So, certainly I think it's going to be a question to replace Deuce Vaughn's dynamic ability. But when I look at the baseline and having a quarterback who I think can make everybody around him just a little bit better, it just makes the floor higher. And look, if this was a much tougher Big 12, I don't know that I'd have Kansas State number 2. But I think that this is a year, again, where there's going to be a lot of transition and turnover, and Kansas State is the perfect kind of team to take advantage.
Yeah. One of the teams that has a tremendous amount of turnover is Texas Tech. Last year's super experienced defensive, I think they had 10 of 11 guys were seniors starting on that defense, had a pair of running backs that, carried a ton of balls for them, wide receivers. Like, they've had a big transition. Now, they've got some good momentum going in the program right now, but personnel-wise, are they going to be hurting a little bit this year after suffering some of those losses?
Well, I think that one thing on the defense side to look at is, they played their last 3 games without a couple of their starters, including Tyree Wilson on defense, and they managed to put some good drives together still and managed to win all 3 of those last games. And, I think that offensively, whenever Tyler Shuck's been in the lineup, which is a huge if, probably one of the biggest ifs in college football, but they've been, I think there's something like 8-1 whenever he starts and finishes games. I mean, they are a consistent team whenever Tyler Shuck's in the lineup. I love what they have at receiver. I think they're super deep at the position. At running back, I'm not too worried about that. Offensive line, they've got a lot coming back. Defensively, like you mentioned, turnover, but they were a team that played a lot of depth last year as well. They rotated guys in. I think that they have a good system and a good defensive culture. The numbers didn't ultimately love them, but I think that they masked some of the actual sort of effectiveness of the defense at times. So, I mean, when I look at this, I mean, I make this comparison with Jeff Traylor at UTSA all the time. Everybody waited for these guys to come in and be recruiters, and they ended up being good football coaches with rosters that weren't theirs. Now they're going to have more of a roster that's theirs at Texas Tech, and I think it's going to fit well. I think that they're going to develop well. And again, when you talk about teams that are obviously motivated at a high level, that execute at a high level, that are coached at a high level from top to bottom with a staff that I think is really good. Again, I think that when you're playing a lot of close games, Texas Tech is probably the team that I trust the most to kind of take advantage of those moments. You know, one thing that I look at dating back to 2019 is every year in the Big 12 title game, and I don't have Texas Tech in the Big 12 title game, but every year going back to the Big 12 title game, you've had a team that's basically ridden close game luck to get there. 2019 and 2021, it was Baylor. 2020, it was Iowa State. 2022, it was TCU. Well, I think that Texas Tech might be that team that's able to ride close game luck to having a better season than people expect, because I think that they've got a staff that really knows how to take advantage in the margins.
ECU, just an incredible 2022, right? Had some close game luck, like you mentioned. What's your expectation for them in 2023? Like how big do you think the drop off is going to be?
Well, when I look at the non-Texan Oklahoma teams in the Big 12, I think what you're looking at is you have to have a solid roster throughout with a couple guys who can be difference makers. And last year, TCU had those difference makers, of course. This year, they have guys who I think can emerge as difference makers, but they don't have the guys just there and ready the same kind of way. They were aggressive in the transfer portal. They added a couple guys from Alabama, including Tommy Brockermeyer, JoJo Earl, Trey Sanders at running back. So I think that, you know, they're hoping that some of those guys can turn into contributors. Defensively, I think they actually have a chance to be better with what they bring back. The question is obviously offensively, they rotate out a lot of the guys who were such a big part of their team. So I have them, you know, the line is at 7.5. I have them narrowly hitting the over at 8. Last year they were at 6.5 and I bet the under. So maybe this is just a trauma response to seeing how badly I whiffed on them last year. But I do think, you know, when I look at their losses, I have them basically losing almost all of their road games and winning most of their home games. So I think it's going to be an inconsistent year. I think by the end of the year, they're going to be better than they were at the beginning. But, you know, I think that 7 or 8 is probably about right.
Oklahoma State's, and I mean, all of these teams are really difficult to predict. Oklahoma State is one of those where, you know, whenever it feels like everyone's kind of down on Oklahoma State, that's the time to pick them to do well. You know, they brought Bowman in, who's got a great arm. He's a gunslinger. Mike Gundy's probably the best I've seen at taking his roster and just going wherever they take him. We've seen defensive-led teams. We've seen teams that lead with the running game. We've seen, it's been a while, but we've seen some air raid teams that throw it all over the yard. I think that that's probably what we're going to see this year with Oklahoma State. They're going to move back to that style. But how difficult were they to predict? And, like, what are some of the big factors for them that could result in a good season, or if it doesn't hit, turn things bad?
I think the biggest question, and this is kind of unanswerable, is does Mike Gundy consider what happened last year to be rock bottom, or is he not going to learn from it, and is this going to be rock bottom for them? I think that last year was rock bottom for them, where I think they finished 1-6 in their final 7 games. Once Spencer Sanders started dealing with injuries, the entire thing just fell apart. He made obviously some interesting personnel decisions and coordinator decisions, right? Bringing in a Division II coach who runs the 3-3-5, but I think that that's a recognition of where the Big 12 is going. It's moving to this 3-3-5. It's taking away some of the dynamic stuff that we saw during the mid 2010s. And obviously, I think it's a response to Oklahoma and what they did to dominate the conference for so long. So I like the fact that he's being forward thinking from that perspective. We saw a great story from The Athletic on Alan Bowman coming out this past week, and it feels like what he's telegraphing is that they're going to try to be a little bit more multiple and maybe not be under center by any means, but maybe factor in a couple different stuff as well. So that sounds more forward thinking than I worried Mike Gundy was going to do. But it's going to be a rocky year. It's going to be an inconsistent season. I don't know that they have the personnel to be all that good in the Big 12 this upcoming season. You know, I have them going 8-4, but at the same time, I don't really have them winning almost any stretch games except for that Oklahoma game. I have them basically taking care of business with Kansas at West Virginia, Cincinnati, BYU, and that's it, right? So they can get to 7 or 8 without having to work that hard, and it might just be that as they have a transitionary year.
We'll get you back to the interview, but first,
Bishop McGuinness Catholic High School represents a tradition of educational excellence in Oklahoma City. Grounded in a faith-based education, students prepare to meet their potential with an individualized academic path that strives for success. Bishop McGuinness offers a college prep curriculum that includes 22 AP courses, participation in OSSAA athletics, where they've won over 100 state championships, and numerous clubs and organizations for students to join and grow. If you want to provide the best possible educational and spiritual development for your children, contact Bishop McGuinness Catholic High School or visit bmchs.org. Financial aid is available.
And attention, business owners, you need Insurica in your life. Insurica is one of the country's largest insurance brokers with 30 offices throughout Oklahoma, Texas, and the Southwest. Insurica is able to customize programs by accessing the latest information from many insurance carriers. They compare and contrast coverage offerings and pricing in order to design a cost-effective, comprehensive program to meet your business's specific needs. Insurica's clients become best-in-class businesses by working with Insurica's team of advisors to manage risk. Purchasing insurance is only one way to protect your business. Best-in-class businesses win by avoiding a loss in the first place. If your business partners with Insurica, you'll save huge amounts of money and take back control of your total cost of risk. I'm an Insurica client, and you should be too. If your business wants to be best in class, connect with Insurica at Insurica.com. That's INSURICA.com. All right, back to the interview. Okay, looking at Baylor in Iowa State. All right, it's been a roller coaster under Dave Aranda there in Waco, and Iowa State now 2 disappointing seasons in a row under Matt Campbell. Do you believe in the Bears or the Cyclones more in 2023?
I definitely believe in the Bears more heading into 2023. I think that, one, you've just seen Dave Aranda be more aggressive in writing his mistakes, I think, than you have with Matt Campbell. They made an offensive coordinator change, getting Tom Manning out of town, but it was an internal hire, Nate Schillhouse, taking over the offense. Defensively, you know, I mean, Iowa State is a machine. They were the best defense in the conference last year, and I think that they're going to be in perfectly good shape this year. But, you know, I think that Baylor has just, again, been more aggressive in trying to right what it struggles with. They used the transfer portal much more liberally this season than they did last season. Iowa State only took, I believe, 2 players in the transfer portal from a team that went 4-8. You know, with Baylor, I think that they have a chance to get back in some ways to stuff that helped them during their 2021 title run. Blake Shapen coming back as a second-year quarterback, I think, will be really big for them. They added many more weapons around him, which I think was actually probably their biggest offensive issue last year, was their lack of receiver talent. Ketron Jackson is an Arkansas transfer who was going to be Arkansas's wide receiver 1 most likely before he ended up transferring. And defensively, you know, look, last year was a disaster. Dave Aranda's really never had a defense as bad as last year's Baylor team. They were aggressive in the transfer portal. They added a linebacker from Liberty, who I think that they really like. My big question for them is, can some of these secondary pieces grow up? And they brought in a defensive coordinator, Matt Palich, who focuses on the secondary, was a safeties coach before. So again, I think that Baylor, you just trust how, one, the state of their roster, I think, is just a little bit better. But 2, they've been much more aggressive trying to fill their deficiencies. And, you know, again, both of these teams were also close game luck teams last year where everything went against them. So either of them, I think, could easily have a flip in 2023.
Kansas has a rare situation going on to where you could argue and have a very strong case that if all things were equal, they got the best quarterback in the conference, and you know you have them going 5-7. It's tough. You feel like I think, at least myself, I want to believe that Kansas has found something. They're going to be more competitive, but the realistic thing is, yeah, they've got the great quarterback, but what's the rest of the roster look like, right?
Yeah, well, and I think for me too, they got to 6 wins last year. They were a little lucky to probably get to that number, and all credit to them. I mean, luck makes the world go round. Teams win national championships because they get some luck, but I don't necessarily know that 6 wins was per se representative of what that team was. I think that they were probably more of like a 4-ish win quality team, but like that's still a lot better than they've been for a long, long time. And so this upcoming year, I think they're probably about a 5.5 win quality team. And it's just potentially going to be a swing game here or there. Maybe that Illinois game at home early in the season ends up being a swing game. So you talk about them being competitive. I think they're going to be competitive with everybody. Like, they get Texas Tech, Kansas State, Oklahoma at home. I don't think they're going to beat those teams, but I think that they could give somebody a scare for sure, like they did, obviously, to Oklahoma a couple years ago. I want to be clear, right? I think this Kansas team is better than the one that played last season. I just don't know if they're going to be able to ride some of the breaks that they got to being able to win. I mean, look back at the game that got them to a bowl game. It was Oklahoma State completely imploding on itself. And so I think this will be a more representative season, and 5-7 will feel disappointing after what Kansas did last season. But I think that in a way, being able to go into 2023 and win 3 Big 12 games shows that last year was not a fluke, that this is a real team that can be really competitive, that you should not just pencil in at the bottom of the conference. So I know that 5-7 probably doesn't feel all that attractive to Kansas fans, but I would see it as a step of progress.
Right. Yeah, it's just, you shouldn't feel bad for picking Kansas to win 5 games. You should, Shehan, you should. Now, last one, I'll let you get out of here, man. What fan base have you gotten the most blowback from? I imagine because, hey, when you put it all out there like this, and once again, go read the article. It's fantastic. It's really well done. But I gotta imagine you have received a lot of constructive feedback.
That's a great question. So this isn't my answer, but I do have to shout out West Virginia fans who are exactly split. Some are like, how do you only have us winning 3 games and finishing last place? That's insane. We've never done that. And the other half is like, we're going to win a game. I don't know about that. Like, they are so split on the topic. And look, if you're a West Virginia fan, I understand. I mean, 3-9 is not something that this roster and this program is used to. I'm concerned that after that first stretch where they play, by the way, at Penn State and versus Pitt in the first 3 weeks,
Brutal.
that everything might just fall apart, right? That's what I'm concerned about. The other team that I got a lot from, and it was great for me, as a Big 12 reporter, to finally meet Cincinnati fans. Since they're now members of the conference, this is my first real interaction with them. I have them going 4-8, and look, I mean, if you're Cincinnati and you've seen what they've done over the past couple of years, I get being mad and upset about it, but this is not the same coaching staff. This is not the same quarterback situation. This is not the same defense that they had. This is a different type of schedule. I don't think they have the depth right now. And again, I could be wrong. I pointed, to that Cincinnati Oklahoma game. That's going to be the Big 12 opener. I would not be surprised if they had a great game and we're able to build some momentum, but I just don't see it on paper right now. I don't see a quarterback in Emory Jones who's going to be able to be a top-tier quarterback in the Big 12. I don't see, they've got a great defensive lineman in Dante Corleone who's going to be an all-conference player. And once you get past that, I just don't see the vision for how this team is competitive in the Big 12. So it's going to be a tough first season. It's going to be a tough transition for them. But again, like I said, if you were to tell me that any of these teams rides, a silver bullet all the way to 9 or 10 wins, like, it's possible. All of them have competed at a high level, but I just don't see the path for Cincinnati right now.
I'm guessing every fan base, not all of them, but most fan bases hated their win totals, but everyone, like, as a group, was upset about the Texas pick, right? Did we at least come together as a conference with that pick?
Well, I did get a couple of, how do you have Texas losing 2 games? How did you they should be going 11-1 or 12-0, and lots of stuff certainly about, again, picking them to beat Alabama and then lose to Houston, which again, that I say, watch Texas, man. That's what they do. But no, I mean, look, a lot of people responded and we're like, oh, you do this every year. You overrate Texas every single year. And I'm like, I don't know who you think you're talking to.
You've
That's
been
not
lumped
me.
in. You've
Yeah,
been
I've been
lumped in with
lumped
the
in.
rest of the media.
Spoiler alert to people. One, the media does not just have one total opinion on things. Two, somebody called me a corporate shill, like CBS benefits from Texas being good. You know, we don't get the SEC after this, right? We're only shills for the Big Ten after this season. So like, it's just, I love it. I mean, again, Texas, this is going to be such a fun year. And actually, even when I look at Oklahoma, again, obviously as a team leaving the conference, I think that one thing that's going to maybe never be replicated is this upcoming season for Texas and Oklahoma, because you're talking about a schedule where everybody is going to, I mean, every year Oklahoma gets everybody's best shot, but this is going to be a unique situation where this is like every single game for them is going to be like that Texas versus Texas A&M game back in 2011, because this is the last chance that all of these teams are going to get a chance to play them. So it's going to be unique. I think that certainly both programs are going to be able to handle it. But if you told me again that Texas has some insane game against anybody, really, it wouldn't shock me, because I do think that it's just going to be that kind of year. I mean, hey, guess what? Texas plays Kansas at home. I'm not saying it's going to happen.
Oh boy.
But this is the last time that Kansas will play Texas as members of the same conference. So it's going to be a unique situation. It's going to be a really fun year. And honestly, more than anything else, what this article made me do was made me want football season to start tomorrow.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Well, appreciate the time. Thank you so much. And I'll see you here in a couple of weeks at Big 12 Media Day.
Can't wait. Talk to you guys later.
All right, man. Thanks. I guess I kind of do the same thing Shehan does when I'm making my Big 12 predictions, but man, to put it all out there in one article like that and have to come up with reasons, you're basically just inviting fan bases to yell at you, which what a brave man. Brave man.
It's not easy. It's not easy. And, you know, it's like a funny dynamic too, because there's this overwhelming, like it happens every year to a certain degree with Texas, but this year it's strong, right? With how good Texas is supposed to be. And to go ahead and take that, you know, viewpoint with kind of what everyone is saying out there and have them losing to Houston it's bold, but I 100% get the premise. Like that's part of what you see with Texas. They've been a team that we've said in the past, they don't know how to handle victory, right? You'll play a really good game and then, you know, feel like they've arrived and really let down. But I don't know. It's not an easy position to be in. You've got to make picks, and we'll see how it all unfolds.
Yeah, I did not pick Texas to play for the Big 12 championship game, and it's this simple for me. Sark's never won double-digit games as a head coach, and Texas hasn't won double-digit games. They've won double-digit games one time in the last 13 seasons. I know how talented the roster is, but we've been able to say that a lot. So I'm just for Texas, I'm going to have to see it before I pick them to do it. That's just where I'm at with that program. Now, Kansas State, I'm kind of just simulating them through, right? Just because I believe in Kleiman, I believe in the identity that team has. Can't believe I'm going to say this. I believe in Will Howard, but I don't have that belief in Texas. And there's no doubt that me being raised to hate that program factors in. There's no doubt. I know that. There's bias there. I understand that, but just going to have to see it, man. That's where I'm at with it.
And I also think that they probably have one of the more difficult schedules in the Big 12.
Yeah.
If you compare their schedule to Oklahoma's schedule, I would say we got off far easier. Now, who knows whenever it all gets here in the fall and we actually see what everyone's got. But as you look at it right now, I'd say Texas has a tough little gauntlet to make it through.
Yeah. All right. Let's finish up with our winners and losers of the weekend. As always, Ted, kick us off. who do you have as your winner of the weekend?
I got to go with the Cincinnati Reds, man. Elly De La Cruz. A prospect like that it's just so incredible and invigorating for a fan base. The fact that they won 12 games straight, they lead the NL Central with 41-36 record. But the real thing is Elly De La Cruz hits for the cycle. First player in Major League Baseball history to hit for the cycle, steal a base, and knock in 4+ RBIs. And he's still like in his first 2 weeks as a Major League Baseball player. Just incredible stuff.
Even though Braves ended that win streak, right?
Yep.
And that game had so many home runs in it. I saw the highlights in it. There was like 8 home runs in that game. But that dude, he's like, now is he entering one name territory? Like just Elly?
Yeah.
Because I see tweets, just Elly, and I know exactly who you're talking about. And I'll be real. I didn't know who the guy was like a month ago. And now he's a one-name guy. Like, that's how damn good he is. That was quick.
Yeah, that's crazy. He's a shortstop that's like 6'5". He can run. Obviously, he can hit. Just really incredible. Now, I will say this. We have seen some stuff like this where a prospect makes it to the bigs and starts off just red hot. But it's a matter of time before the league, builds that heat map on you and figures out what your strengths and weaknesses are and how they need to pitch you and all of those things. So I imagine this red hot streak is going to be somewhat short lived, but he looks like he's got all the tools to be an all-star type of player. It's fun to watch. And baseball right now is more fun to watch than I can remember.
I'm going to make this comparison, and I want you to take all the off the field, off the court stuff. Is Elly, is he the Ja Morant of baseball? Like, he's like so explosive and exciting to watch for me. And like, it's weird to be like, I really enjoy watching that guy run around the bases. Like, I don't think I've really ever said that about a guy, but he's just flying a million miles an hour. Like, it's just, there's something different about his explosion, his athleticism than a lot of other guys, right? Yeah. I don't know if Ja Morant's a good comparison, but that's kind of the feeling I get when I'm watching this dude play baseball. It's kind of how I feel when I watch Ja Morant play basketball. I'm just like, good Lord, man, look at this guy.
Well, I haven't been to a stadium to watch De La Cruz, but I can imagine whenever he steps to the batter's box, like there's a buzz in the stadium, right? Like whatever you're doing, like if you were at the restroom or you were ordering some peanuts or whatever, like there's got to be a buzz that everyone stops what they're doing and dials in for that moment. And I think that's the same thing with, you can say Morant, you could say like when any of the greats, like whether it's golf or, football, whatever it is, like it's must-see TV for that moment whenever he's got an opportunity. So, yeah, I hope it continues. Like I said, they're going to build a book on him, how to attack him to make life way more difficult, but he looks like one of those rare talents as of right now. So it's going to be fun. And I like seeing the Reds get it going, man. It's nice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Who do you have as your loser of the weekend?
I had to go back to West Virginia, and I know we've talked about the Huggins deal, but it continues to. It sounds like it's turned into an ordeal, right? So, they've got to make a move on a head coach, and it sounds like, they were really interested in John Beilein, who is a Hall of Famer. Most recently, where was he? He was in the league, right?
He went to he was the Cavs head coach, and it failed miserably.
Was with the Cavs, but he spent some time in West Virginia in the early 2000s, was at Michigan for a long time. A coach that has a really nice pedigree. Sounds like, at least if you listen to what people are saying online, boosters and players unhappy with that situation and maybe shut that down. There's even rumors that Bob Huggins, to some degree, still has his hand in what's going on there, possibly. I don't know, with some influential people. But they ended up going within the coaching staff on an interim basis for a full year until next offseason, just to try and keep the roster intact. As you mentioned last time we talked about that, they've had some really good transfers, and they put together what looks like it's going to be a really promising team. So in an effort to keep all of that together, they had to keep it within the coaching staff currently. And who knows what's next with that whole debacle in West Virginia.
Yeah. Josh Eilert named the head coach for 2023, the 2023-2024 season there for West Virginia. They've already had, 3 guys enter the portal? Like, is Eilert the guy that they feel most confident can keep those 3 guys, right? Convince them to come back? I don't know. All I know is Ren Baker, he inherited a big old pile of poopy in his 2 revenue generating sports. And man, it is just, he's grinding. He's earning that big paycheck as the athletics director. My goodness.
Yeah, it's never tough whenever, you're presented with, like, what are you going to do with the Huggins situation, right? With the month that he had, but it sounds like there's some very influential people that, are unhappy about it as well, that, write some big checks to the university. It's not a good situation for anyone to be in.
Especially Huggins' daughter's notes app that she put out there, long letter. That didn't help anything. I think she thought she was helping. She did not help. That was not helpful for her father. Everyone drinks. Come on. It's like, okay, this is awkward.
Whenever I lived in Fort Gibson, we lived out in the country, and there was a lady that lived near us that would go on a walk every day with a big trash sack, and she'd pick up like cans and bottles and stuff that were that people discarded out the car windows as she went on her walk. And even here where I live in Goldsby, there's a gentleman that does that and walks up and down. I don't see Bob Huggins as the can collector that's taking a walk around the neighborhood with the sack, right? I know people do that, but that's kind of what she tried to paint the picture as with Bob Huggins. Typically I'll give people the benefit of the doubt, but I'm not buying that one.
Yeah. He's done a lot of great stuff for that state and that university. There's no doubt. Raised a ton of money for like cancer research and all that, but everyone already knew that. You don't need to get out the old notes app and try to defend your dad, or at least give it some time, just a little time. But yeah, I read that. I was like, this is not helping. But hey, it's her dad. I get it.
That's right.
It's her dad. I get it. All right, let's get to my winner and loser. But first,
John Vance Auto Group has been serving Oklahomans for 40 years. Family owned and operated. They got 9 full service dealerships in Woodward, Miami, and Guthrie. No matter what your vehicle needs are, John Vance Auto Group has you covered. They carry domestic brands such as Ford, Lincoln, Chevy, Buick, GMC, Chrysler, Dodge, Ram, Jeep, and Wagoneer. John Vance Auto Group's goal is to give unequaled service and to exceed customers' expectations in every way, which is why they have their lifetime loyalty program. And here's how it works. Buy a new or used car from them. All you have to do is get all of the manufacturer recommended maintenance done at the Vance dealership. And if something goes wrong with the components of your engine, transmission, drive, axle, or transfer unit, they will cover the repair costs. It's a great deal. You can browse their entire inventory or find the John Vance dealership near you at vanceautogroup.com.
And First Fidelity Bank is a full-service financial institution based in Oklahoma with tailored solutions for all your personal and business needs. Checking accounts, saving accounts, home loans, and much more. They do it all. Whether it's online banking from your computer or mobile banking from your phone, everything is stress-free with FFB. Making mobile deposits, paying bills online, and moving money to different accounts could not be easier. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, make your life easier and go bank with First Fidelity Bank. Visit ffb.com for more information. All right, for my winner of the weekend, thought about going with the Los Angeles Angels. Been a lot of Angels content on this podcast lately. They beat the Colorado Rockies 25-1 there at Coors Field. And it was, I watched the highlights. They had 28 hits. It was insane. I mean, it was insane. And it was a very fun highlight reel to watch there for the Angels. But yeah, playing good baseball. They said they're thinking about actually holding on to Ohtani. Like, look at the Angels go, Ted. Look at them go.
That's crazy. 28 hits. That I feel like that's one of the coach pitch games that I'm used to attending, where it's just serving them up, baby. They're hitting them all over the yard.
Yeah, that's good. But my winner of the weekend, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Late last week, of course, the NBA draft. And Sam Presti drafted a guy I knew. I knew his name already. I knew where he's from. Like, I watched him play in college. Seems like he can help right away. I didn't exactly know how to respond to Cason Wallace getting drafted. I was like, I know that guy. This is easy. This is easy. That's not always the feeling we get, but hey, if Sam Presti traded up for him, right? That's good enough for me, Ted. I believe in Presti and his evaluation ability, and I'm expecting, and I don't know if it's Cason, Cason. I think he probably answers to all of them. The only thing I saw was he said, do not call him Carson. That's the one that sets him off, which noted. Never going to call you Carson. Never. But seems like a guy that can help right away. And you and I love the guys that when the first thing that comes up is this guy has a motor and plays his ass off. Mm-hmm. I really don't need anything else. Like, just give me that. And if you play with that mentality, everything else will fall in place. I'm excited about the pick.
Yeah. Were you shocked that like they maneuvered to get there?
The trade with Dallas, and remember when we had Andrew Schlecht on to talk about it, he mentioned the Thunder taking on that Bertans contract, right? That's what ended up happening. And really, we'll see what happens with Davis Bertans if he ever plays for the Thunder or not. I'm not entirely sure what the plan is there, but you didn't give up anything, but and you're taking on a large contract, but they've got plenty of cap space, and you didn't give up any of those future assets to move up.
Yeah.
You gave up that pick and you took on Bertans. It's not like you gave up any of the bevy of future first rounders. So I had no problem with what he did.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I'm not as versed on Wallace as you are. I like it though. Athleticism, motor, great defender. I'll take it. See, like if he could do that and continue to develop a 3-point shot, it's going to be what you have to have.
Yeah. Now he shot 35% from three at Kentucky, which is pretty dang solid, right? And you would expect that to get better. But, you know, on the list of the Thunder's needs, did I think 6'2" guard was at the top of that list? I did not. But he's got a 6'8" wingspan, right? And he's a playmaker. This is what the Thunder are just stockpiling guys that know what to do with the ball in their hands offensively and guys that are versatile pieces defensively, right? It's clear that's what Presti is doing, and Wallace can handle. The shooting is decent and it's going to improve. But man, he's got that dog in him. That's all that matters to me. Mark Daigneault compared him to Ed Reed, dude. The free safety, Ed Reed, the Hall of Famer. I was like, that's all I need to hear. That's all I need to hear. If he's Ed Reed, my goodness, let's go.
I'll take that. Yeah, it's interesting. And maybe this is dumb of me, but I feel like the pick also kind of says a lot about what they think of the current roster.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's not like a reach or a stretch. It's for someone that very quickly has a role, and it's being able to like play make, as you said, defend, develop a 3-point shot, but someone that can kind of help you right away that isn't going to be a long-term project, just feels like could be a decent piece for you right away.
Yeah, which is exciting. Like as a fan, and there are rumors they tried to get up into the top 7 or 8 to get Koulibaly, the French guy, weren't able to do it. Who knows if that is true or not. But when you look at Cason Wallace, he looks like a guy that's going to be in the rotation right away, right? Especially now, he had a little bit of a back issue, but I would imagine that they get that all straightened away there. The Thunder have a great reputation of, taking care of their guys and doing some preventative stuff when it comes to things that linger like that. But I was fired up, went and watched all the highlights I could find. And some people are comparing him to Dort and wondering what this means for Dort's future. If you have multiple guys that bring it night in and night out like Dort, give me all those guys. I want them all.
Right. Yes.
Give me all of them. But this is what Kevin O'Connor had in his draft guide, and I think he does a really good job for the Ringer. This is what he said about Wallace. Defends much bigger than his height would suggest, much like Drew Holiday. He hounds opponents with his length, toughness, and fundamentals. Ted, Drew Holiday is one of our favorite NBA players, and it's pretty simple. We watch him play basketball, and you think the guy can play football because of the way that he plays basketball. And that's essentially the biggest compliment you and I can give an NBA player.
Well, whenever you've got a guy that you mentioned the wingspan and he's 6'2", like he probably makes a lot of plays because it's hard to just envision a guy like with that type of reach at that size. Like you feel like you've got an edge on him, but because of the reach, he's able to sniff out mistakes from guys and make plays. So yeah, man, I'm not going to sit here and say that like I'm just like in love with the pick, but I think it's got a chance to be incredibly solid. A lot of upside.
Yeah, if the shooting improves, that's good. And I don't know why it became such a big deal. Right now, clearly, the reporter that asked him about comparing Lexington, Kentucky, and Oklahoma City, that guy clearly has no clue that Oklahoma City is one of the 25 biggest cities in America. He's got no clue, and that's fine. That's fine. But, and you and I would say we are, when it comes to the state of Oklahoma, we are homers, right? We get defensive, right? Just like a lot of Oklahomans. We carry that chip. You're born with it when you're born here. But I think some people just got a little too sensitive about Cason Wallace saying that there's not a lot to do in Oklahoma City, right? And he hasn't spent a lot of time here. He, in time, is going to find there are plenty of things to do when you live in the state of Oklahoma and you live in Oklahoma City. But some people interpreted what he said as like some big slap in the face to the entire state. I was like, guys, just let's relax. It's not that big of a deal. I'd rather a guy say something like that than, man, there's so much stuff to do there. I'm going to be so distracted. We'll see how my game turns out. Like I'd rather hear a guy say, you know what? There may not be much to do, but I can focus. And I mean, the guy literally said, I'm perfectly fine being in Oklahoma, but that was already after he said there's nothing to do, and people were pissed. So pissed.
Yeah, quit getting upset. You're putting out a bunch of small city energy. We don't need that.
Yeah. Big city energy only.
Big
like
city
that.
energy only. Like you just take that, water off a duck's back, doesn't mean anything. He'll be fine whenever he comes here. There's plenty to do. He'll be shocked to find out that, we don't ride horses to work, and, we got cell coverage and everything. It's going to be great. It's going to be like he hit the lottery. He's not even going to know what to expect. It's going to be amazing.
We got Wi-Fi.
Got Wi-Fi.
We got great Wi-Fi.
We got great cuisine. Got everything you want.
Yeah, he'll be fine. One other piece of Thunder stuff is, we'd talked about Vasily Micic And I continue to hear it like 6 different ways. Michich. I'm not entirely sure how you say it, but he's made the decision, right? And this is Euro League, Turkish League, like guy can ball, right? He's made a decision. He wants to play in the NBA. If that's going to be an OKC, I don't know, right? You think about the Wallace pick, and does it make sense if they thought Michich was going to be on board? That's an interesting discussion, but at the very least, Sam Presti is going to go try to find some value for this guy, right? Because they have his rights. So that has become a very interesting situation with him. And that's a guy that is a veteran guy. I think he's 29 or so. And I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's kind of fun to imagine what the Thunder could flip him into, or if he's fine with playing here, then let's go, man. Lace him up.
Yeah. No, it'd be interesting. You know, he's a veteran guy, but you know, those European leagues are much higher level basketball than they used to be. So it's not looking down on anyone to say that when they've won championships and honors over there in some of those leagues, that's legit, right? So you got to give the guy, got to give him some respect for doing that, and we'll see what happens with it. I know they'll make the right move. Yeah. I guess I don't know though. I'm confident they'll make the right move.
I am hopeful that Sam Presti will continue to be the best in all of basketball. All right, for my loser of the weekend, thought about going with Deion Sanders, Coach Prime. Some scary stuff, man. Mm-hmm. Right? And, you know, all the attention, all the momentum that Colorado's got. And it seems like he's got a pretty substantial blood clotting issue and had surgery to fix some of the clots in his leg. Remember, you know, he put it out there that there had been discussions about possible amputation of his foot. Like, does not sound fun. Now, from what I read and what I saw from his Instagram, it seems like the surgery went very well, which thank God. But man, this does not sound fun at all for Deion Sanders. This sounds miserable, dude.
No, he's had to use those scooters and stuff to get around. You know, it's from a former athlete to see like there was a video of him floating around on Twitter last couple of days of just a highlight reel of a bunch of his interception returns and punt returns for touchdowns, and the guy was incredible. Like, by far the fastest guy on the field at all times. Like, high stepping as soon as he catches the ball, and there's people that can't catch him when he's doing that, like fast guys. It's incredible. So to know that that's what he was, and now for so long he's been reduced to a ton of pain and not being able to be very mobile is it's not what you want. Hopefully, you know, they fix it and he gets some good blood flow back to his feet and his legs and is able to recover a bit and get some of that use back. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. I want him to be at full strength, man, because I think him and what he's either going to accomplish or not accomplish with that program, I think it's the most interesting story in college football. Yeah. I really do. So hopefully he gets back to, 100% and is able to put all of his effort and energy into that, as opposed to, not worrying about whether or not he's got to get his foot cut off. Right.
I know.
That's God. That would just having that linger over you. I can't imagine. Oh my gosh. But my loser of the weekend, man, we haven't talked about Les Miles in a long time.
No, we have not.
And he's back, baby, because, and I'm not sure if you would ask me, hey, is Les Miles a college football Hall of Fame worthy coach? My initial reaction probably would have been no, but I mean, it's definitely a conversation. But now it seems like he's definitely not, because LSU vacated 37 wins from his tenure because of some recruiting violations during that period of time. That dropped his winning percentage as a head coach from 66% to 59%. Just a reminder, the criteria for a coach to get into the College Football Hall of Fame, the threshold, is 60%. Ouch, Ted. Ouch. That is brutal.
Well, like the double ouch part of it is, I haven't done the math, but I got to imagine had he not gone to Kansas, he probably would have stayed at 60%.
Oh, yeah. There's no
Right?
doubt. Because all they did was lose when he was there.
That's all
He was
they
awful.
did. Right. So, yeah, that's tough.
And now, remember, he was let go at Kansas because of some unflattering accusations from his time at LSU, right? Being inappropriate with female staffers, right? And that's why Kansas said, hey, you're losing and this, you got to go, man. But I look at this situation because this is something we talked about when Mike Leach passed away, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the College Football Hall of Fame should make an exception for Mike Leach, right? Because he won 59% of his games. But Mike Leach is 59% and Les Miles 59%. Like all these circumstances that factor into both. The number is the same, but those are not equal situations. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I think the College Football Hall of Fame would be willing, with the tragic passing of Leach and him just the air raid and what it has done to football. Like Mike Leach should be in. I don't think really many people are going to go to bat for Les Miles from just what I've ever heard about the guy.
Right. Yeah. And listen, I don't know. All I know is accusations and stories. I don't know the guy. It's just you hate how like the vacated wins,
which I think is stupid.
It only ends up really affecting him. You know, like of everyone involved. Like even when you're talking about championships and stuff, and I'm not necessarily talking about LSU here, but it's like USC. We all watched the championship. We know who won it. Like we know who won the Heisman. You can take it away if you want. Like most people are going to go ahead and claim those people are, the best or whatever. But in this situation, it's like no one cares about the 37 vacated wins except for maybe the guy who needed them to be eligible for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's like this is all about extra benefits to, I think, a recruit's dad. And now you look at it, people are paying these recruits and their families left and right. There's bidding wars to get these guys to come to school, and you're vacating 37 wins that could keep Les Miles out of the Hall of Fame. You just look at this situation. Les Miles has to look at it and be like, really? I mean, really? Like that's what we're doing.
Wait a second. You're telling me the quarterback is getting paid $1 million for this upcoming season, and we're vacating 37 wins because someone gave a player's. Yeah, it seems like you almost have to like anything that happened after this point is now okay. Like you just don't even go back and waste your time on resources on that. But that's the NCAA for you.
Well, and I think from what I understand is like LSU implemented this stuff on themselves, right? Because they got the notice of allegations and all that.
Which we've all learned you never do.
Never do. You never cooperate. Don't vacate your own wins. What are y'all doing? The NCAA, let them, they're going to do whatever they're going to do, right? It has been proven that if you cooperate, go ask Mike Boynton in Oklahoma State basketball what cooperating with the NCAA gets you. I don't know why LSU
delay, go to court.
Yeah.
Fight.
Lawyer up.
Doesn't matter how small you fight, every little piece of it tooth and nail. Absolutely.
Maybe the leadership at LSU is just like, we hate Les Miles. We're vacating these wins.
Someone's like, hey, you know what 37 wins would do to his winning percentage?
Oh, I guarantee you, whoever's decision that was, it's awfully suspicious that it landed right at 59, right? Someone did some math in that thing.
That's wild.
On that note, episode 330 in the books. We'll have a new podcast that'll drop on Wednesday. Just a reminder, you can hear Teddy from 3 to 6 on 94.7 The Ref. You can hear me on SiriusXM Big 12 Radio, channel 375. Hope you all have a fantastic week. And until next time, we appreciate y'all for listening. Do what you always do, Oklahoma. Take care of each other.